Testing.
Got it. Okay. So I'm turning it on. Okay. Wait, there you go. You're good.
Hello.
I need to just check.
Ever accused me of needing a microphone. October 10th, thank you. October 10th. No, I always use my big school teacher voice. And we have just discovered that now on March 12th of 2016, we'll have a speaker named Victoria Barnett, who is the curator of the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C., and the editor of a 17-volume series of the works of Dietrich Bonhoeffer, one of the major Dietrich Bonhoeffer scholars in the world. And others that are sort of coming. So thank you very much for being here. I'm assuming by virtue of your being here now that you are on some sort of communication path about the McMichael series. So we're delighted to have you here. and to enjoy our two speakers for tonight. We're going to do introductions in a relatively interesting way. I'm going to introduce Ellen, and then Ellen is going to introduce Nicholas. So, and both of them will have a few things to say and some things to show us. But then I hope we have ample time this evening for questions and comments and to hear stories from both of them. I have known Ellen Greenblatt forever. I think we were separated at birth. No, Ellen and I have we in common. We are English teachers from way back. You've heard the story about the knock on the pearly gates, and St. Peter says, "Who is it?" And the little voice says, "It is I." And St. Peter says, "Oh no, not another English teacher." So that's where Ellen and I have in common. But Ellen taught for many years in several schools in San Francisco, and she and I met by virtue of our work together on the Advanced Placement Program. And every summer we end up being leaders of Advanced Placement Summer Institutes for Teachers. I think we're on twice together this summer, as a matter of fact. Despite the fact that she's an ardent San Francisco Giants fan, she is a very good person. But the most notable thing about Ellen that I'd like to share with you tonight is in 2013, she became, I got the words right, American Jewish World Service Global Studies Fellow. Global Justice Fellow, which took her to Uganda to work with various non-governmental organizations about the rights of women and children and LGBT people. And I think it was at that meeting, that occasion that led her to meet Nicholas Mwanda, whom you'll hear more about tonight. So Ellen is here. She and I have had this idea cooking for about the past year, that she and Nicholas do need to come and share their thoughts, their stories, and their initiatives with us here at the McMichael series. So let me urge you now to please welcome Ellen Greenblatt, who will later on introduce Nicholas Mwanda. Ellen, it's all yours.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me with the microphone? Is it working properly? Thank you. Thank you. My name is Ellen Greenblatt, and I'm delighted to be here on my first ever visit to Arkansas. I'd particularly like to thank David Jala for reaching out to Nicholas Mwanda and me on behalf of the McMichael Lecture series. Before showing a brief film I made about my recent experiences in Uganda, let me start by telling you a little about me and the work in which I have been engaged over the last years. Then Nicholas will take over. Like many of you, I have been a socially concerned person for as long as I can remember, both doing service and advocating for social causes. So when I was accepted into the first ever Global Justice Fellowship that had just been launched by American Jewish World Service, a human rights organization based on the principle of repairing the world, I leapt at the chance to participate. The 14 fellows, my fellow fellows, we call each other, ranged in age from 25 to, well, my age. I was by far the oldest fellow, with most of my colleagues in their late 20s and early 30s. The study group I was in, my study partners, were 26 and 29. We would meet in a bar. Traveling to Uganda as a Global Justice Fellow allowed me to meet Nicholas Mwanda, the founding director of Trans Support Initiative Uganda, at the very moment when he and other LGBT, lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people were in the gravest of danger. But I'm getting ahead of myself. A little background on AJWS, American Jewish World Service. AJWS supports hundreds of social justice organizations in 19 countries in Africa, Asia, Latin America, and the Caribbean, not in the Middle East, that work to empower women and girls to stop violence and to address larger issues of discrimination, poverty, and human rights violations, including the rights violations of LGBT people. Through this work, AJWS strives to enable women and girls and LGBT people to access the full spectrum of opportunities in society and to live in health, safety, and dignity. The idea behind the Global Justice Fellowships is to make individuals like me and you stronger advocates for global human rights here in the United States by allowing us to learn firsthand about successful grassroots efforts already in place around the world. AJWS focuses on rights-based advocacy, which means its grants to NGOs, non-governmental organizations, focus on addressing systemic and societal reasons for problems. Here's an example. If people are hungry, needs-based advocacy tells us, give them food. They need that right now. Give them a sandwich. But while rights-based advocacy doesn't ignore people who are hungry, rights-based advocacy also addresses what societal reasons prevent the production, distribution, and access to food, and helps local groups devise solutions to these systemic problems. That's rights-based advocacy. So before going to Uganda to see the work of Ugandan grassroots human rights organizations, our group spent 8 months learning about Uganda and advocacy in general. The two areas on which we concentrated were assaults on the rights of women and girls and on the rights of LGBT people. Every year around the world, 10 million girls under the age of 18 enter into forced and/or early marriages. Child marriage violates the rights of girls and dramatically diminishes their ability to make key decisions in their lives. Girls who marry early are more likely to drop out of school, to suffer health problems, to live in poverty, and to experience gender-based violence. These girls are also more likely either to die in childbirth or to lose their newborn infants. Equally sobering statistics tell us that around the world, even in California, even in Arkansas, an estimated 1 in 3 women will be beaten, coerced into sex, or otherwise abused in her lifetime. In some countries, that figure rises to 7 in 10 women. In my film, which I am an amateur filmmaker, but it serves a purpose in showing you what I saw and learned. In my film, you will see an innovative and successful program created by a Ugandan NGO that shows women how to have a stronger voice, even as it educates the police and men to take the issue of violence against women seriously. Here's another sobering statistic. In 77 countries around the world, homosexuality is illegal, punishable by imprisonment, and in some cases, by death. In Uganda, a few months before our trip in February 2014, the Ugandan parliament passed the anti-homosexuality bill, criminalizing both homosexuals and human rights workers, including medical personnel, doctors and nurses and social workers who help them. So our journey, the journey of the Global Justice Fellows, became more dramatic and tense than any of us had anticipated, since while we were in country, Ugandan President Museveni signed the bill into law. The groups with which we were meeting in secret, and we did not talk about what we were doing in any way with any groups, except the groups with which we were meeting, the groups with which we were meeting were justifiably terrified. And although I was not at all fearful for my own safety, we were all alarmed about what might happen to these courageous defenders of human rights. Let me stop for a moment in my talking to show you the film, which is in 2 parts. The first explains the background of anti-homosexual sentiment in Uganda, and the second follows with a hopeful segment about a program that helps women and girls. So someone has already tilted the, whoops, I'm going to walk away without this. Just going to get this up. It's all queued up, we hope. Wake up. Oh. Sure, if you can. Oops. Can we do that? Oh, great. Sure, do you want me to move this? Okay, thank you, that's perfect. Okay, is that? I don't think that light really interferes.
In a country as large as Uganda, you would expect a great deal of diversity. And there is diversity. But the vast majority, some say 94 to 98% of Ugandans, support the anti-homosexuality bill that President Museveni signed into law in February 2014. The law made homosexuality and support of homosexuality crimes punishable by long prison terms. The roots of anti-gay policy in Uganda are traceable to British colonialism, specifically to Section 377 of the Indian Penal Code, introduced in 1860. Much more recently, the rise of some evangelical Christian leaders, like Pastor Scott Lively of Defend the Family, who is supported by American churches, have convinced Ugandans that homosexuality is a choice and that homosexuals are out to recruit the children of Uganda. They preach anti-gay messages in the name of Jesus and of Christianity. The signing into law of the anti-homosexuality bill unleashed even greater public outings of LGBT Ugandans, and human rights groups in Uganda are themselves in danger of being accused of supporting homosexuality. International groups have mobilized, but a dilemma lurks within international outcry. Ugandans feel that they have the right to decide norms and policies in their own country and feel defiant about what they see as international interference. In August 2014, a Ugandan court struck down the punitive anti-homosexuality law 6 months after it was passed, evoking joy among human rights activists. But the court ruled on narrow technical grounds, preserving the possibility that the law could be revived. Gay Ugandans continue to live in fear of persecution. So what can human rights groups around the world do at this point? As hard as it is for those eager to help, the wisdom seems to be that human rights groups, even as they are providing support, should shy away from too large a public presence in Uganda, both to avoid endangering Ugandan partners and to avoid evoking even stronger responses to LGBT people. Other human rights issues also cry out for our help in Uganda, as in the rest of the world. And one issue on which we can focus and report openly is the effort to improve the plight of women and girls. Here is a case study, the story, background, and one of the activities of the Ugandan Center for the Prevention of Domestic Violence, or CEDAVIP. Human rights advocates everywhere can take hope from the effectiveness of their programs. We are not forgetting our LGBT partners as we await their views on how to work to overturn anti-homosexual sentiments and practices. We are just featuring and celebrating CEDAVIP right now. The CEDAVIP offices in Kampala, the capital city of Uganda, resemble community organizing offices in many parts of the world. Here, murals urge people to solve problems, particularly problems with domestic partners, without violence. But the real genius of Sedovic's approach becomes apparent only when we follow its activists into outlying areas and witness how they involve the community. It's hard to believe that within the boundaries of Kampala are areas that have such a rural feeling. There are signs for schools everywhere in Uganda. Many times, as with this one, there is no school. Education, as we will see, will occur in public, not in school. Global Justice Fellows did not know what to expect when we arrived at the site of the Center for Domestic Violence Prevention street theater performance and the drumming The actors in the unfolding drama are familiar to people in the community because they are people in the community. Sedovic recruits actors to participate, and each actor commits to performing 4 hours per month. They are not paid, but they are rewarded with community recognition. Here is the dilemma behind the play. A wife whose husband has locked her in, a not uncommon practice in this patriarchal society, escapes and goes to the hospital to be tested for HIV. Her husband returns in a rage at her disobedience. His dilemma becomes clear. If his wife gets a positive HIV diagnosis, his life as a powerful man is finished. He will be doomed either to flee his village and seek sexual partners where he is not known, or to become disempowered, emasculated, a pariah in his own village. His rage grows. The role of a trusted female friend is crucial in the play and in this society. The friend says, "Your husband does not have the right to beat you. You must go to the police." The husband continues to rage.
They are fellowship for women here. So she's saying the Secretary for the Fellowship for Women had sent her to talk about a meeting of income generating activities.
As the translator and author of the play pointed out to us, female onlookers did not appear upset at the husband's rage because it is something they experience all the time. Here, as at several points in the drama, the Center for Domestic Violence Prevention facilitator tells the actors to freeze, then asks the audience, what should she do? What should we audience members tell the husband? The women watching have a ready answer and heap scorn on the husband. As the play resumes, neighbors, especially the good female friend, urge the wife to go to the police. Part of Sedovic's work is to build women's faith in the police by educating the police to take seriously women's complaints of domestic violence instead of dismissing them as normal and sending women home. The actor playing the police officer is taking a brief break from her military service nearby. In the Sedovic play, justice is served and the husband is taken away. The effectiveness of the drama is clear as young men and young children watch and learn. According to Sedovic, a study by the London School of Tropical Hygiene showed that Sedovic education programs resulted in a 52% reduction in violence against women and fewer sexual partners for men. Join with American Jewish World Service and other organizations to protect the rights of women and girls.
Oh, thank you. The film you've just seen, which if you have questions about, we can talk about during the Q&A, shows why a bill before the United States Congress right now is so necessary. IVAWA, or the International Violence Against Women Act, would for the first time codify a comprehensive approach by the U.S. to fight violence against women and girls internationally. If passed, IVAWA, a revenue-neutral bill, which means it adds nothing to the cost of foreign aid that the United States already gives, would, among other things, ensure that the U.S. government, through the State Department and USAID, supports efforts to promote security and stability and puts in place mechanisms for preventing and responding to violence against women and girls, both during conflicts and in everyday life. Let me give you just a brief example. This is not in the legislation, but of how this might work. Say USAID is helping people, helping a village to build wells so that there is a reliable source of clean water. Are we all for that? Yes. Which segment of the population does much of the fetching of the water? Women. So if women go to get water from a well, especially after dark, they are targets for rape. If, as part of the USAID grant, we stipulated that there should be solar panels installed, which is not very expensive, there will be light at the well, even at night. Now, light will not prevent all rapes, but I surmise it would really diminish the number of attacks on women going to fetch water. So it's that kind of simple solution that would be codified by IVAWA. And in the Q&A, I will tell you something about what you can do to help for the passage of IVAWA, because I'm an advocate, a citizen lobbyist. Because AJWS supports the dignity and human rights for all, our advocacy efforts are aimed at mobilizing supporters of human rights to persuade the American Congress to support both the International Violence Against Women Act and the more recently introduced International Human Rights Act, an unprecedented international effort to end hate crimes against lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people and other sexual minorities. At this point, I'd like to turn the microphone over to Nicholas Mwanda, who will eloquently explain and discuss the issues facing LGBT people in Uganda, and by implication, though he wants to limit it to Uganda, throughout the world. Nicholas is the founding director of the Trans Support Initiative Uganda. He continues his advocacy work here in the United States, even as he negotiates his way into living in a country so different from his home country. He has been an asylee in the United States for less than a year, and he's already doing amazing work. Just last Thursday, in fact, he was awarded the Global Human Rights Advocate Award from the Washington, D.C. LGBT Coalition. And he was awarded that award. That award was presented to him by the newly appointed Global Ambassador for the rights of LGBT people, who was just appointed by President Obama. Nicholas has served the Ugandan LGBT community for more than 12 years During his career, he has played key roles in organizing LGBTI people. I stands for intersex, people who are born with indeterminate genitalia or sexuality. Through organizations like Freedom in Rome, Uganda, Transgender, Intersex and Transsexuals, Uganda, and the Coalition on Human Rights and Constitutional Law. I have a whole other paragraph of affiliations for Nicholas that I could read to you, but I think you'd rather hear just from him and his own words. So please join me in welcoming Nicholas.
Can you hear me? Thank you very much. I am not going to do a lot of reading because whatever I have to say to you, it's me. That's me. I'm here to speak about myself. It's true. My name is Nicholas Mawanda. I come from a family of, I have 28 siblings. Yes, wow. My father had 14 of us, and I am the last born. And my mother had 15 of us, and I'm the 8th. She had 2 sets of twins. Yeah. Well, yeah, I won't go into details of the big numbers and whatever that means. And however, for me as a trans person who came out as a lesbian at the time, maybe that is about 10 years ago, I have faced my own music of being an LGBT person in Uganda. As you all know, Uganda is one of the countries, the 78 countries in the world that criminalizes homosexual acts, that doesn't even want to talk about homosexuality. Now, the law Ellen was talking about is not the only actually law that we know Uganda has that is against LGBTI people existing in Uganda. In 1962, Uganda got independence from the British. However, while they were leaving Uganda, they left a penal code. A penal code which was a copy and paste from India and was brought in Uganda. And as they left their penal code to guide us through whatever we're doing. I feel sorry because I am a prince from the Buganda Kingdom, where we get the name Uganda. And Buganda Kingdom was the first to get independence. Actually, the British handed over independence to the king, who is supposed to be my grandfather then. And then the king said, well, I'm not sure I want to deal with politics. So he appointed a prime minister, the first prime minister of Uganda at that time, Obote I. And Obote was handed over this penal code and all that. And then my grandfather stayed back to just enjoy the kingship and all those things with his subjects. I feel sorry that I belong to a kingdom that did not look into things like where will actually this take us. Because maybe if they actually looked at that, to tell you the truth, homosexuality actually has been existent in Africa or in Uganda as human as everybody else, from the first human being. To tell you the truth, before even the British, before the first missionaries came to Africa, homosexuality was on our continent. And it was dealt with without people being dehumanized, without people being, treated like as if they are bewitched or crazy or, they're not human. And not until these British came and said, no, this is criminal. And you should be actually, ostracized, you should be discriminated against, it's evil. And then these missionaries, the missionaries were like, oh yeah, Jesus says, ABCD, Jesus says, what, you're not human enough, you should be what, you're going to perish. To tell you the truth, I read the Bible. When I was told that I was coming to speak in a church, I said I'm going to cite a few things. And I'll cite for you one or two. I'm sorry to take you through my... So I want to cite for you something from John, chapter 1, verse 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And then I'm going to take you to 3. All things were made through him, and without him nothing was made. Nothing was made that was made. So many people tell us, no, you're not godly enough. No, you can't be a Christian and you can't, at the same time, you're an LGBT person. So what are you talking about? God himself says, in the beginning, it is him. And through him, everything was made. So are you trying to tell me that I'm not created by God? Are you trying to tell me that I'm actually not a person of God? I refuse. Because he says, it is through him that I'm actually what? That I'm made. So, I continue. I said I'm going to raise just a few. I'll postpone this for the meantime. I know that we all know that, the Bible says that we all are created in God's image. Is there anyone who says no in this room? No. And I'm saying, as imperfect as my people back home see me, I'm proud to be a God's creation. Because I know my family says I'm female, I should be woman. But I know I'm not. And I am very, very proud because I'm in God's image. And I identify as a man. And I'm not scared, and I'm not going to even shy away from that fact. And I love myself. It has taken me so many years to accept that I'm actually loved and I can love myself because of what people say in my head, because I've been beaten to just being who I am. I've been raped to correct me. They say, okay, you're saying you're a man. If we try this, doesn't it? It didn't stop me. You can do whatever it is, but you won't break me. I'm here to speak to you not because I'm the first trans man in Africa or in Uganda. I'm not the first, and I'm not the last. I'm here to speak to you because I want you to see what it means. I want you to get a face of how we look like. Many people look at TVs and all they see is children dying of hunger, people dying of HIV, people sitting on the streets begging. Yes, there is some of that, but there is also strength within us. And that's what I want to show to you, that even with all of that, there is strength within us that we can still stand up and speak about it. I can still smile and laugh, not because, I don't cry, but for me, I see that there is a bright, future awaiting all of us, and even with all of that, we can carry that and make it better. Like I said earlier, my family is big. I grew up seeing my mother beaten up by my stepfather because my father died when I was 3 months old. And she tried to hold on, and it wasn't so long, After some years, 6, 7 years, she got married again. I wasn't happy about it because I was used to having my mother, just me and her. But then she got married again, and then she got pregnant with my other sibling. And then she got pregnant again. And then I started seeing my stepfather drinking. And he could come home and beat her up. It wasn't fun. But the one that really stood out for me was the time I went to see my girlfriend. I had been to school and then came back home. Then she came and said, well, you can come to our house. She came from a more privileged house than I was. And catching up with her, we talked. She had a separate room. I didn't have my own room. She had a separate room. And, you know, we were there. She had a TV. We were talking. And then time caught up. I came back home a bit late, an hour after the time I should have gotten home. And my mom asked me, why are you late? And I said, well, I'm sorry, it was this and that, because also I had to take a taxi. So taxis are not the taxis the way here. So taxis are public transportation in Uganda. And so I explained to her. But the next thing I heard after some time, because I went to my room, and my room was kind of next to their room. And I was staying with another cousin in that room, but at that time she wasn't there. I heard funny noises from my mother's room. I was like, what is going on? Maybe they are just having a... But then something, I don't know, there is always that feeling when something is not right. I just got up and I went and knocked on the door. When I knocked, they weren't. Normally when you knock, they would say, yeah, come in or hold on. I knocked again. The third time I just opened. Because something wasn't right. And when I opened, I found my stepfather strangling my mom on her bed. I didn't think. I just went and punched him in the ribs because I tried to pull him. It wasn't, I just punched him. It's not the right thing to do. It wasn't like, yeah, I'm not being physical, but I had to save my mom. And he let her go. Immediately while he let her go, he came for me. And my mom was like coming from this, like when someone has tried to suffocate you for long, and then she just said, run! I ran. I just ran. And he came after me. And there was a hole in the compound, and he tried to throw it to me. It was a big thing. It was a big sin. And at that time, I was 13 years old. And that night, from that night, I never stayed at my parents' house. I remember very well, it was past midnight when everything was, he said so many things to me, insulting my dead father, saying so many things. And he said how I was sowing a seed of homosexuality in his children. Why was my mother paying school fees for me to go to school a homosexual? He should use that money to buy donuts for his children. And he said he never wanted me to even step a foot on his land. I was just, after night, like in the middle of the night, I was just out of home. And he gave my mom an ultimatum. She either goes with me or she stays and keep her children. My mom had babies, She had just given birth to twins. She was in the middle of a hard rock and something else, hard place, a rock and a hard place. I said to her, Mom, don't worry, I'll go. She said, try and go to your auntie's, but the place where she was telling me to go was miles, and I had to walk. I walked. I don't know how, but I just walked. And I reached my auntie's place, and she opened the door. And she asked me, I couldn't say much. I just said, can I just sit here or sleep or whatever? But sometime my aunt went and she had everything from my mom because I couldn't talk about it. Well, that is a piece of what it means to be who we are. And from that time, I learned to be strong. From that time, I started providing for myself as an adult because I could not even stay at my auntie's house for long. I was there for like a month, and she was starting to line up men for me because she thought I was being who I was because I lacked men, maybe. So I left. My mom didn't have much money. She didn't have enough money. You know, she's just a home mom, stay mom, and she tried to save some little money, and she gave me some, and I rented a small room. She talked to this lady, and the lady was like, yeah, I can try to be a parent and also just keep her here. And I was there. But I thank the Lord because I did not die from all that. I did not break. It was hard. It led to so many temptations. I started going to nightclubs because I thought that's what everybody does. And I was, trying to find some happiness. I couldn't see it anywhere. And there I met people, friends, who were like me. The Ugandan movement that you're seeing that is very energetic, we started in a bar. And we are all people who have come from broken past, who have faced, different forms of violations, discrimination, and whatever it is, abuses. And we embraced each other. We took our pain into something that, can also speak to other people, can also change people's lives, and can also bring awareness on what is happening into our communities. We started as a group of friends. We started with a little organization called the Gay and Lesbian Association of Uganda. But then we were like, okay, this is so obvious, maybe we should try something else. Then at that time, some of you may have heard of Freedom and Roam Uganda. And for me, I believe in love. I love love. For me, the first thing that came to me was, okay, so they talk so much about how tradition and our constitution, says you can only marry when you're a man and a woman. So why don't I challenge that? I went ahead and married someone I had fallen in love with. She was at that time a Miss Uganda. Very beautiful. Every man wanted a piece of her. But I said, I will do it. And I made sure people knew about it. I sent out invitations. More than 100 people showed up within our community. And I was married by a Catholic father who is gay and proud, even though by now he's kind of excommunicated. But yeah, we had our time, and it was written about. I wasn't scared. But the next day was written about, and she was disowned by her parents. For me, I wasn't scared. I had already been disowned anyway. And I was living alone. And I remember, she was crying, and she's like, so it's just me and you in the world. I said, yes. And trust me, we are enough. What am I trying to say here? Our communities in different geographical locations have a similarity. Even though we are different in color, in cultures, political background, or economic, we have one thing in common. We are all human. And I'll say this. The reason why we suffer, whatever we go through, it's because people do not accept love and do not want to actually exercise the fullest potential of their being as humans and lovers. Trust me, if this world had a little compassion, because these laws are made by human beings. Someone sat down with fellow whatever they are, and they said, well, you want to go to this place. Like when you look at why is it very difficult for people to access America? It's on earth, but it's very difficult. So people are challenged by power. Oh, I love my space, and if this person gets into my space, I will lose it. Why don't we love to share? What is so wrong with someone loving another person? Do we have to love the same way? Do we have to eat the same way? Is it wrong even to eat differently if we have to? And I often ask myself, why is it so difficult for people actually to accept diversity? Because even when we look at ourselves, when you look at these hands or fingers, they are not the same, and yet they contribute to each other. Why don't people look at what we can contribute to this society and see it as a very good difference in a very good way and just appreciate it? Do we have to be even to coexist? I don't get it. And for the past years of my existence being a political activist, I'm actually now looking at love as another approach to create change. Because I believe love we all share. Someone might believe in human rights, and another one might say, well, those are political things. Do they mean anything? Yes, they do, but they choose to not be political. However, as human beings, we should love. I want to read you another. It's in Proverbs. Proverbs chapter 3, the verse 27 and 28. And it says, do not withhold good from those to whom it is due. When it is in the power of your hand, do so. Do not say to your neighbor, go and come back, and tomorrow I'll give it, when you have it with you. What does that mean? For me, I look at it as people who actually have power in our hands, but we choose not to give it, who can actually free someone, but we choose not to free them just because it doesn't mean anything, just because we want to exercise something. And I want to challenge ourselves, because I know you're all here because you care about LGBT rights or about LGBT people. But how many of us actually leave our comfort zones and speak about LGBT people in spaces that are not in these rooms? You know, I normally speak to people, and I feel like as if I'm talking to us, but not talking to the people that we should be talking to. And that in that sense, I feel like we are actually limiting our potential. We are limiting the space. We are not, reaching where we should be. While I was coming to Arkansas, people were telling me, what are you going to do there? What? You're going there? What are you going to do there? And I said to myself, why is it that they're so like, okay, why are you going there? Yeah, because of the laws here, because of the conservativeness in this area. And I said, that is even the reason why I should go there. Because why should I keep talking to people who already understand who I am? It doesn't make sense to me. It's like feeding a cow who already has eaten like how many dinners and suppers and lunch and whatever, and yet there is another cow that actually has gone days or weeks without having anything. So for me, coming here, yes, I enjoy and I'm so privileged and honored to be in your presence. But I hope whatever we share or whatever I share with you doesn't end with you here. That you at least speak to someone beyond these rooms, about what your experience is. I don't want to speak laws to you. I don't want to speak, whatever activism it is. I want you to understand that life in Uganda, a country on earth where you are, actually doesn't let people be who they are. And as I speak to you now, because of those laws, we have more than 1,000 LGBT people stuck in a camp in Kenya because they had to flee. I am speaking to you now because I had to run from my country because I was targeted. And I know some of your parents, would you feel comfortable having your children, run to a country where you don't even know if they will make it or they will? My parents or my mom or my family, they don't know when they will ever see me again. I happen to be a parent. Every day I have to think of my son. I don't know when I'm going to see him. Yes, I have hope that I'm going to see him, but it challenges me because he's gone through a lot. He's still going through a lot just because he's a child to someone who has been openly known as an activist and openly known as a trans person. And that is so that he has to pay for all those things. In Uganda, they call them sins. So I feel like there is so much that all of us can do. All of us may not be activists. We don't need to be activists. All of us can contribute to this cause. Last week I was speaking at the World Bank. There's been spring meetings going on. Many Americans, I feel sad actually, when we look at America from the outside, we think it's the perfect country in the entire world. And yet it's not. Because when you reach here, you realize that, things are actually, And it hurts me that you have the power to change the world, but you're not actually exercising it. I was speaking at the World Bank. World Bank is a big institution based in Washington, D.C., that even Americans who actually have it here don't know exactly what impact it creates, in the world. America has 16% of votes, voting power, the biggest, over the World Bank. And yet the World Bank finances governments, finances, projects that actually don't empower people that you feel that should be empowered. The World Bank's vision is to end poverty and prosperity, sharing and, end poverty. And if we are talking about ending poverty, how can you leave LGBTI people out? These are people who are actually not privileged to have a job, good education, family, who are not privileged even to exercise. Me, myself, it wasn't easy for me even to go to a doctor and say I'm sick of malaria. Because before they do that, they will first want to know, oh, are you a man? Are you a woman? What's going on? Are you homosexual? Before that, many have come, and you won't get that. So if the World Bank, continues to just finance projects that are not even productive to the things that we feel should be, and I'm not just talking about LGBTI people, I'm talking about women and girls. I'm talking about women who are, widows. I'm talking about women who are suffering from fistula. I'm talking about women who are barren. In our communities, those are women who can be outcasted. So I feel in your own capacities you can play a big role. You pay your taxes. The money at the World Bank is your taxes. As an American, it's your right to know where your money is going. I was busy talking to your executive director at the bank. I was busy talking to some of your congressmen and women the whole of last week to make sure that, you know, America's international policies are inclusive to everyone. What kind of world are we going to live if we are actually, you know, leaving out people who are vulnerable to the things that we talk about? So I want to end my talk by saying that thank you for letting me speak to you. My experience is not the best, but I can assure you, seeing people who care about these issues give me hope. I'm here, and I know together we can, you know, create a difference. I don't expect all of you to speak out so loudly in the papers, so whatever, but I want you to contribute to whatever cause that you can contribute to, and you know that it will actually get to the grassroots, because many of your contributions actually just pay big offices, big salaries, and majorly corrupted officials. So make sure whatever your investment is, it actually reaches to the projects that you're dear to you. Sorry. And people back home need you. We are not empowered in so many ways. Myself, I'm not educated. I'm so happy that I can speak to you and you can actually understand what I'm saying. But not many can say that. Not even many can write their own names. We are speaking of a community that right now is torn beyond torn. And we need you. We need your expertise. We need your emotional. We need your financial support. We need your, you know, your love above all. But we also need your commitment that it's not just going to end this year or next year. And we need you to own the process that America, President Obama has started something so serious by appointing a special envoy of LGBT and human rights. It's something so big. And Congress, part of the Republicans, they are trying so hard to make it, you know, so hard that we don't have this, you know, a reality. Please don't let it happen. Many countries, many people in the world rely on America. You may not take this seriously, but it's serious. Many of the decisions you make here affect us all. So, yeah, thank you, and think about those things that I've just said. Thank you so much.
I think I do need to use the microphone because we're being live streamed. Jackie, are you going to be the trotter around? The other microphone on the piano right there. We've got some time left for questions and comments, for thoughts, questions for either of our speakers. And as you have these thoughts, Jackie will come around to the microphone. We are being live streamed tonight, and this event is being recorded. So we do need to, if you have questions, we'll need to bring a microphone around to you so that you can speak into the microphone. So we'd certainly welcome your thoughts, questions, comments, ideas.
You mentioned a refugee camp. Is that in Uganda, outside Uganda? What's that situation?
Okay. I can take it from here, or do you want me to?
Oh, you're fine. You're mic'd already, yes.
Okay. So the refugee camp that I mentioned, it's in Kenya. It's called Kakuma Camp. And we have some of our refugees in Kakuma Camp, and others are actually in Nairobi, Kenya. And UNHCR came up with a report about a month ago stating that they have registered more than 1,000 Uganda LGBTIs. And some of these 1,000 actually have been resettled, some here in the US, others in Canada and some parts of Europe. But we still have many of them still there. And they need your support, actually, yes.
Is that a segregated refugee camp, or is that part of a larger refugee center?
Yeah, it is. It is part of the big refugee camp that houses everybody else, every refugee within the East Africa region, with refugees from Somalia, Ethiopia, Rwanda, Burundi, Uganda, Congo, Kenya.
Just let me add something. There are NGOs that are working actively. These are not state-sponsored refugee camps, although Kenya has allowed LGBT people from Uganda to be there. They have tolerated their being there. But there are NGOs, and I could give you a list of NGOs if you want, who are working to try to resettle people who cannot go back to Uganda. But it's a complex situation, and it's not as if there is one group that's just in charge of it.
I'm going to ask you to speak up a little bit more next time.
Okay.
We're having a little trouble hearing you over here.
Oh, sorry.
Other questions, thoughts? Yes, good.
I'm Harris Sonnenberg. I'm a member of Good Shepherd Lutheran Church here in Fayetteville. The Evangelical Lutheran Church, of which I'm a part, has a large contingency in Africa. However, since our vote on 2009 to allow our gay and lesbian pastors to live in a committed relationship, obviously there's been a lot of dissension. And a big break that church broke from our synod because of this issue. Now, I've been reading something about this, and I know that churches can speak out. They said, however, they get a fair amount of their money from government. And if they want that to continue, they don't speak out. I'm not saying whether that's right or wrong. I don't think it's very good. But that is one of the issues that they seem to have. And we're trying to rectify that, but we'll see what happens.
Nicholas, go ahead.
I think whatever the issue is the issue of money. For me, I look at money as something that doesn't define who I am. It's just paper. Even though people use it to, oppress other people, I refuse to be part of a movement or to be part of a generation that use money for humanity. Where is your soul? Would you want your grandchildren to actually be treated as, some goods? Is it how churches should work? Because they receive some government money? I thought churches should actually preach equality, because the Lord says we are all equal in the eyes of God. Why is it a big issue because of money? For me, it doesn't make sense. In fact, if I was part of that church, I would say I think we are not, praising the same God as I praise. Seriously.
Yes, others. There's a Latin phrase. I don't know how your Latin is, but the Latin is called. The phrase is pecunia dicit, and for those who have good Latin, that means money talks. But no, I think Nicholas's point is well taken. Is that we are, and as you say, we're governed by the Treasury, but that's something that there's money to be had in other locations, I should think.
I just want to add something that I agree that money always plays a role. I mean, it plays a role. But if 94 to 98% of the people in Uganda feel that homosexuality is unnatural and that homosexuals are out to recruit their children, then it goes beyond the issue of the government giving this to the churches. The major method of communication that I learned about when I was in Uganda from our Ugandan partners was the radio. Everyone listens to the radio, and there's tremendous number of preachers on the radio preaching the kinds of things that would make us very, very uncomfortable. So it's a question, it's something that I struggle with myself. How can people who consider themselves people of goodwill and people who are acting in the name of God sincerely think that? How can they have such very different ideas from each other? How can that be? And I find myself retreating from personal judgments about people, and it's why I go to I can't allow myself to go to the personal judgment part, because I'm a human being and they're human beings. But I can go to the part that says, how can I back up behind that and maybe change the playing field, make people more informed? I'm a lifelong educator. I believe that if people learn more, there's at least a small chance of change coming about. So if it's hard for me to imagine why some people in any part of the United States, why anybody cares who marries anybody. I cannot get my mind around that. Mm-hmm. Why do they care? Let them be married. Let them not be married. I mean, you know, and it's hard to get a divorce, and it probably should be, and, you know, all of that business. And yet there are people of good will who profoundly disagree with me. They really do, and they think they're doing the right thing. So it's so much more complicated. And that's why I go to the social activism part and say, what can I do here? And do I have time to tell one story? So I live in a part of the country that is blue politically, right? So there's not much for me to do in that part of that country, because all my legislators are on board for the International Violence Against Women Act. So any act before the US Congress that has the word women in it, conservative legislatures say, it must have something to do with abortion or with family planning. No. So I was asked by a group in Modesto, California, which is in the Central Valley, and it's a very conservative area, to help to lobby their congressman, who's now one of my heroes, Congressman Jeff Denham, Republican of Modesto and Turlock. So I went with one other person to meet with Jeff Denham. We got a face-to-face with him. And I had done my homework. I'm a teacher. I do my homework. And I had read up about Congressman Denham, and I knew he had a 15-year-old daughter. So I didn't go in and say, I know you have a 15-year-old daughter, and I'm here to talk to you about child marriage. I said to him, as a teacher, when I look out at classrooms filled with 15-year-old girls, and I think, oh my Lord, if they lived in another part of the world, they would be married off 15-year-old girls. He, who had read the legislation because we came to lobby him, I'm an unpaid citizen lobbyist. They meet with citizen lobbyists because we're not paid, okay? He had read the bill, and he stopped us 20 minutes into our 30-minute meeting and said, I read the bill, and I'm enjoying your presentation, but I want to tell you I've decided to support the bill, and not only that, I'm going to be a co-sponsor. And I thought, now we can hold up Congressman Denham, a conservative Republican, to the other members of the Republican caucus. And to me, it's one tiny step. But I believe in one tiny step, as the Spanish say, paso a paso, step by step. I believe that we can bring about change. I hope so. I'm not giving up. I'm going to keep at it. I'd be happy to help you. I'd be happy to help you. Come back and lobby your because I'm very presentable. You know, I'm a very presentable. I mean, I'm kind of, out there in my politics, but look at me. I present well.
I think we have time for one or two more questions. Thoughts, Laura? Good. Oh, and then Laura. Yeah. Go ahead.
Have you heard of Compassion Action Network International?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Tell us.
Okay. So I have some cards. I wrote some information I'll give to you. But Compassion Action Network International is an international organization. There's a TED Talk. Karen Armstrong was a former nun from England. Right. And she decided one of the things she wanted to do was spread compassion around the world. So she created Compassion Action Network International, and then organizations and cities and individuals can sign up. They can sign the Charter for Compassion, and cities can choose to become designated as compassionate cities. Well, our mayor decided he wanted Fayetteville to be one of those cities. And so 3 years ago, a group of us started trying to figure out how we can spread more compassion in Fayetteville. And it took us 9 months, and we were designated as a compassion city. There are compassion games in September. February is Month of Compassion.
I love it.
This February, you may have seen, we teamed up with, I'm sorry? St. James, yes. Black History Month. We teamed up with Black History Month and did a number of things in the month of February. So, that would be an organization for you, to possibly, team up with, because, Louisville, Kentucky, Seattle, Washington, I think Houston. You can get on the website and see all the cities that are already designated as compassionate cities. And I believe there's a LBGTI organization within Compassion Action Network International too. So something to look into.
2 words to that. God bless.
Yeah.
Thanks. Laura.
I had a question about an image in the video that you showed us. There were several people with signs that said, Barack Obama, back off.
Right.
And I wondered if you could tell me what that meant to people.
So it meant that the United States should get its nose out of the internal politics of Uganda, because Uganda can decide itself what is best for Uganda. And there was a kind of what we would understand as national integrity. We can decide ourselves that this is the best thing for our country, and we don't want Barack Obama or anyone like Barack Obama to come into our country and tell us what to do.
And so did they perceive the United States or Barack Obama as supporting the legislation that was being passed, or trying to block, oppose it? Okay.
Opposing.
Well, it's because I hear about these.
Pushing back against the anti-homosexuality legislation, because Obama did speak up against it. We did not pull our ambassador from Uganda when the legislation was passed, and that was a calculated decision that there could be, in fact, more leverage exerted if we actually had the ambassador in place. But he was a quiet public ambassador. That's what I tried to convey in the film, that it's very tricky for me and people like me with my white face to go in and say, I don't really think you should be doing that here. Why would people not say, excuse me, this is my country. Yeah. You're visiting here. We don't have to follow your...
Right, and so it also makes me think, because we have images of white American pastors who encouraged either the legislation directly or just the attitudes behind it.
Right.
So it almost made me think, it makes me afraid. I don't want to get involved because I don't want to tell other people what to do. I'm afraid of being an imperialist. But then I think I shouldn't be afraid, because those other guys aren't afraid.
Right. 2 films that you could show here that would really rally people. And I've shown them in the Bay Area, and one was nominated for Best Documentary, didn't win it, but one called God Loves Uganda, about the evangelical movement and how it fosters anti-homosexual feeling in Uganda by using disgusting images that pastors show in their churches. And the other is called Call Me Kuchu, which is a Ugandan film about, and Kuchu is a way of, say, you tell me, Nicholas, how would you translate Kuchu?
Kuchu basically means LGBT identifying.
Right,
Yeah,
but isn't
just,
it kind of a negative way of saying it, or no?
No.
Okay.
It is something that we've worked out as a community to identify ourselves because, as a security thing, like the way you called yourself. Yeah.
So that both of those films would be awareness raising and would be a great, kind of thing for the Compassion Week or month or century, we're hoping. I go for a century. One is called God Loves Uganda, and the other is called Call Me Kuchu, Kuchu.
Okay.
Call Me Kuchu is available on Netflix. I'm not sure about God Loves Uganda.
Also, God Loves.
Also on Netflix now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, thank you. I think that we're coming close to time, and I'm sure that Ellen and Nicholas would love to chat with you for a few minutes here as we wrap up for tonight. First of all, thank you to Ellen and Nicholas for being with us. And then 1 minute, you say? Nicholas has asked for 1 minute.
I'm sorry to take the 1 minute, please, if you let me. I forgot to mention to you that my moving to the United States did not actually stop my activism. I think it started another chapter of activism. And right now, I'm speaking about the big numbers of immigrants in this country and the migration system of this country that is actually so broken that you don't know and you don't even speak about. But I want you to actually put your attention into that area as well. And in DC, we are organizing ourselves as asylum seekers and refugees. And people may not know how difficult it is to live as a foreigner in this country. It's one thing to run from your country from persecution, and it's another to actually find the help you need. The system in this country is formed in a way that it makes it very difficult for some of us from different cultures to actually understand what it is. And if you don't know or you don't have anyone to help you through, it may be the best, like the biggest, barrier to actually access services. In this country, as an asylee, I'm not allowed to work, even if I've filed for asylum. And even if the asylum process takes a year, I'm not allowed to work. What does that mean? It means I won't be able to actually take care of myself from the basic needs, even if I need them. And it means that I need support. I am not allowed to move even, because then I don't have any documents to move with. Basically, I'm in one place, but I'm not even allowed to work to support myself. I won't be able to actually, go see a doctor unless I go to the emergency room. Things like that. And what does that mean? I feel that the government actually should be able to look after us, because we are running away from persecution as refugees, asylum seekers in this country. Why am I not protected? Because I'm running away to be protected from whatever is happening. And then I reach here and I'm going through another, dilemma of things. And so I am asking all of you, in whichever capacities you are, we are grouping ourselves in DC. I have gone to different, churches in DC to support the network that is coming up. We are actually relying on faith-based groups, because I believe there is compassion in you, there is love in you, that you can support us to actually, sustain the livelihood of our sisters and brothers and trans folks and whoever they are. So, yeah, I hope through David or anyone, we can still continue the conversation to see that actually people who are coming here do not continue going through the things that they've actually gone through when they are home.
Thank you, Nicholas. Thank you. And I think it's safe to say that pretty much everybody who comes here to St. Paul's in the McMichael series, we never forget you. So but by all means, keep us informed of everything that's going on. Before we close, let me thank all the folks from the McMichael Committee, especially Shay Widener, who's back there cleaning up, who helped get together the wonderful reception that we began with tonight. Please do come back to future McMichael events. Keep your eyes open for future speakers. Thank you very much for being here tonight, and travel safely on the way home.